All right, ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back to Inside Analysis. Yours truly, Eric Kavanagh here. I am so excited. I'm at the Cloudera event, the Evolve event in New York City at the Glass House, and I've got Jide Adeoye from goeasy.
Yes.
He is a data fanatic. He's here at the Cloudera event to, of course, learn, but also talk about what they're doing. And so, Jide, I'm dying to know, what are you guys doing with Cloudera? How's it working?
So we use one of the platforms of Cloudera called Octopai
Okay.
for our data lineage, data catalog, and also our metadata management in general.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's all pretty important because you have to get the
Very,
data
very
right.
important. Yes.
I'm going to use our big question right away. What does it mean to be AI ready for your data? Like, what does that mean to you to have your data AI ready?
So essentially, is your data been structured in such a way that AI is able to support it
Hmm.
from an insights perspective? What a lot of people forget is that AI is only as good as the data.
Right.
So if the data is not structured properly, AI is not going to be useful for
Hmm.
insights
Hmm.
in general. So for us, our major goal is always to ensure the right models that are required to be able to gather insights through our KPIs are
Hmm.
structured properly for AI to be able to be useful for us.
And
Yeah,
how long did that take you? I'm familiar with
yeah.
Octopi. So how long did it take you from the idea to purchasing the technologies to really getting value?
Well, we had three major areas that we needed help with, which was root cause analysis, impact analysis, and also data catalog as well.
Hmm.
So one of the issues that we always faced is that whenever we had like a data issue,
Hmm.
it took us sometimes days to weeks to be able to resolve the issue because we couldn't get to the root cause on time, given the number of data layers that we had in our data warehouse. So with Octopi now, it has helped us to streamline all our data sources all the way to the target tables,
Hmm.
whereby the lineage is very clear. You're able to see all the fields and the various dependencies and know what you need to do to be able to fix your data issues within hours.
Hmm.
And this has helped us from a decision-making perspective because, as you're aware, in a lot of companies, executives need the data right now
Hmm.
to be able to make data-driven decisions. So if they don't have their data on time, they devise other means to be able to get that data, which majority of the time is not accurate. So the decisions are half-baked,
Hmm.
leading to loss in revenue and also growth and profitability for the company. But being able to have the data lineage process in place, you're
Hmm.
able to get faster to your root cause and know what you need to do to resolve the issue so you can get the data in the hands of the executives to make the right decisions.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Wow. That's pretty
yeah,
impressive.
yeah.
And what kind of data are you pulling?
Data from different sources. We have data from our loan application management system, which is in Salesforce. We have our loan data. We have data from Google Analytics as well, because a lot of our customers or prospects come via Google. So
Okay.
Google tracks what they're looking at for us. So
Hmm.
we're able to see the web traffic / web opportunities that we can potentially have and to be able to drive more sales with our products and services.
Now here's a tough question for you. Have you seen a significant change in Google related data since ChatGPT came out? Is that the sort of a disruption that you guys have seen?
Yes, huge. There are a lot more insights now, essentially with ChatGPT connected with Google data
Hmm.
for us to be able to understand our customer behavior better.
Hmm.
So it has actually helped us make more informed decisions
Really?
based on the web data that we get today.
That's
Yes,
fascinating.
yeah.
And of course, you got a lot of historical data too, so you
Oh,
can map
absolutely.
trend lines. Like, how big a
Absolutely.
role does that play in helping you make sense of current data, looking at your historical data?
Oh, it does help us a lot because essentially our company has evolved. So I joined goeasy about 8 years ago.
Okay.
And when I joined goeasy, we had a particular number of products and services. And with our historical data, we're able to see the trends of how those products have grown, why
Oh.
they've grown, and we now know what we need to do to enhance them and also create new products and services for our customers in the current data, leading to additional core KPIs
Hmm.
that has helped us make very, very good informed data decisions as well. Yeah,
That's very
yeah.
impressive. So now that you have this wealth of data to leverage, How fast can you spin up new products and services? Is that a quarterly thing? Is it annually that you take a look at that? Is it ad hoc? How does that work?
It depends on the kind of product we're trying to spin up. Like right now, we're currently working on a credit card product. We're about to do a pilot version of that credit card product, where we're rolling it out to start with to our employees,
Hmm.
because they will pay. Well, we just start with that because essentially we have employees that have loans with us, and those payments are taken out of their paycheck,
Oh,
essentially. So we want to roll it out to our employees first to understand how they're going to use the credit card before eventually roll it out to the customers. How we were able to get to that point was that we were able to utilize the data to understand the employee group that we know will benefit most,
really?
essentially, from the credit card. And now
Hmm.
we now know the target audience for the credit card. Same thing with the customers. We're eventually going to roll it out to start with. We're not rolling it out to all our customers, but we're able to use the data to understand that these are the customers that typically go into certain stores that require a credit card to be able to purchase the
Hmm.
different goods and services that they have there. So the data has been very helpful for us to be able to have a holistic view on how our products and services are being used and help us understand where to enhance and where to create new products as well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And how many of these insights make it out to frontline workers as opposed to decision makers in the back office?
Oh, a lot, a lot.
And what does
So
that look like?
So essentially, our user base for our BI platform, which is called Strategy,
Okay.
formerly MicroStrategy. I don't know
Oh,
if you're aware that we've changed the
yeah,
name
yeah,
because
yeah.
they're the large Bitcoin
Yeah, right.
Bitcoin company. So essentially, all our users in the field, when I say the field, our branches, our stores, our call center, they have access to Strategy, which has all the KPIs on reports and dashboards that enable them know how they're performing, and also for them to be able to pivot to be able to meet their targets if they're at a particular point during the day where the targets are below what is
Mm.
required for that time
Oh, wow.
of the day. So they have full access to all the insights. This wasn't the case before. This was just rolled out about 3 years ago. And we see high usage on average for our dashboards and reports. We have an average usage every month of over 90,000 views
Wow.
for some of the core dashboards that we have in strategy.
Yeah, well, that's a really good tip you just threw out there because it tells me you're paying attention to who's using the information.
That's right.
You know,
Yeah,
historically, dashboards have been built and no one even uses them, and they
yeah,
just keep getting cranked out month after month.
that's right.
But you're tracking who uses it, and then, of course, you can track to what effect they're using it, right?
Exactly. You know, I always tell my team this that we're not report builders, we're decision support providers,
Mm-hmm.
which is different because a report builder would just basically get requirements without understanding the problem that the users are trying to solve and just build a report or
Mm-hmm.
build a dashboard.
Mm-hmm.
But a decision support provider is not just focused on understanding what the problem is the decision that's going to be made as a result of that problem being solved.
Right.
So our dashboards are built to cater towards those needs, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why the usage is high. The usage won't be high if you build a report without understanding the problem that you're trying to solve.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, here's a hard question for you. Are you able to track that decisions are made based upon information in these dashboards? In other words, is there functionality to know when a decision is taken because of something in the dashboard and then be able to track that over time and say, aha, we made that decision
Right.
because of the data in this dashboard. It turned out to be correct. Is that something you can monitor?
Oh, yes, absolutely, because there's some core dashboards that our ELT,
Mm-hmm.
executive leadership team, uses, and also some other dashboards that the rest of the leadership team uses. We know the core KPIs on those dashboards that were used to make certain decisions
Mm-hmm.
at particular points in time,
Mm-hmm.
because those KPIs are the KPIs that measure the success of our
Mm-hmm.
business.
Okay.
So without having those KPIs in place, they're not going to know essentially what needs to improve and what needs to be added. So we can tell at each point in time that because a particular KPI had a particular value, this is when a product was introduced and
Mm-hmm.
what happened to that KPI after. So we monitor that a lot on the different dashboards that we have that our leaders use to make decisions.
That's great.
Yeah,
You guys know what you're doing over there.
we try.
Now, the big hot topic that
Uh,
has everybody buzzing, of course, is Gen AI and these foundational
mm,
models. Are you using Gen AI, or what are your thoughts on all that right now?
Yes, so we're using Gen AI. We're using ethical AI to an extent as well. We're about to start using agentic AI as well. My pet peeve, a little bit, when it comes to AI, and I always talk about this, is AI doesn't replace common sense.
Right,
It's an enhancer of
right,
common sense.
right.
And what I tend to do with the team is ensure that we're using it that way to
Mm-hmm.
enhance, because the meaning of the word A in the AI is artificial,
Right.
not real
Yeah,
intelligence.
that's right.
So it still requires quite a bit of human input. But what we try and do to an extent in terms of all the AI capabilities we have, not just for Gen AI, is to ensure that it is deterministic, and there's also some static algorithm, especially when it comes to the ethical AI piece,
Sure.
because we wanted to be able to determine based on the right criteria without being biased as
Hmm.
well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned agentic, and boy, is that a hot topic.
yeah,
And I'm watching lots of people are focusing on this. There are some interesting theories about how to do it. There's this BDI theory you may have seen, I think is what it's called, where it talks about beliefs,
mm,
beliefs, something in intentions, right? So, in other words, the agent itself will have some persistent memory of
hmm,
its goals, basically, of what it wants to do.
yep.
And of course, Google has come out with this A to A protocol, which is interesting. But to me, it still feels like the Wild West. It still feels like no one has really cracked the code on this stuff.
Yes.
What do you think?
You're absolutely correct. I think where the challenge is being able to determine what the agents are going to do,
Hmm.
because there's certain things that you can't afford for the agents to do.
Right.
You need human input, especially when it comes to monitoring fraud.
Hmm.
There are certain aspects of the process that an agent can do, but when it comes to being able to determine if it's truly a fraudulent activity, there's certain steps that you still need human input.
Hmm.
So it's just being able to look at all your various steps, understand the ones that are actually a little bit ambiguous, that you can
Hmm.
actually work with the agent to program the agent to know that this is the criteria for it to be able to pass this step,
Hmm.
right? So that's where I see the challenge has been. And look, it's a hit and miss.
Hmm.
Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't get it. The beauty of it is you keep trying, you keep being persistent until you become consistent in being able to get the correct model that fits it,
Hmm.
in general. But I guess where the other challenge is too as well is trying to replace people doing those roles with the agents.
Right.
I absolutely disagree with that
You're a
because
smart
yeah,
man.
because I think it's scary.
Yeah.
Supposing the agents fail.
Right.
Then what
Right.
happens? What happens to that particular task and activity? It's
Right.
all gone out of the window.
Right.
So and this is why it's important that you still have that human input. I was talking with someone yesterday about this from Octopai, and what she was explaining to me was that our concern is there may be a gap eventually because what's happening right now is they're leaving the more senior technical folks and essentially not allowing people who are just starting out to come in. But
Hmm.
what happens when those senior folks retire?
Right.
You have no one to be able to maintain and support those models. So I think it's very important that we balance it out. The way I look at AI in general is like when ATMs first came out. So prior to ATMs, what were we doing? We always go to the teller
Right.
to be able to get money,
Right.
right? But when ATMs came out, there's certain things you can do at the ATM machine that you don't need to go to the teller. However, though the ATM machine is still limited.
Right.
There's certain transactions that it still can do that you need to go to the teller. It's the exact same thing with AI.
Mm.
We need to be able to find that balance in terms of what AI is truly going to be useful for versus what you still need humans
Hmm.
to do. So I find that that's where the gap is right now. And I think we'll see this for a little bit, and eventually it will balance itself out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're taking a very thoughtful approach there, and I think it's very important to really think through these things
Mhm.
because AI agents, I mean, basically, I view it as multi-level automation.
That's right.
That's really what it boils down to, right? It's
Exactly.
automation inside of automation,
Yep.
but you have to be able to monitor these things, know what they've done, kill a pod that's doing bad things, be able to
Exactly.
roll back, and you have to have log files for all these things
Yep.
to know what
Yep.
they've done, right?
Yeah.
So at
Absolutely.
a certain point, they could do more harm than good,
Yes.
and that's why you want to be careful, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes, you're
that's
correct.
impressive.
Yeah.
Well, so closing thoughts here, going into 2026. It's hard to believe we're here already.
Yeah. I
What are
can't believe
your
it. 100 days.
right? What are your plans for next year with agents and AI and data?
Got quite a number of things. So right now we're currently working on an AI chatbot that will enable our field users get faster to being able to understand those who have not returned their payments on
Okay.
time.
Oh,
Right now it's heavily manual, taking them hours every day to consolidate those lists and contact those customers. So we're currently working on that right now to be able to consolidate the data, automate the pipeline process and then build the chatbot on top of this pipeline
mm,
to be able to answer those questions within seconds,
right.
essentially. So currently this week, actually, we started it and we've started seeing some very useful results, but it will be fully rolled out in 2026. And there are a number of AI use cases that we have as well, that have to do with getting to know the customer faster. Right now, our agents have to go to multiple places to get customer information. We
Mm,
want to be able to consolidate that as well so that they can see everything in one place and
mm,
be able to attend to those customers based on their needs. And
right.
this is where Octopi helps us because we are able to easily see all the different customer fields that we have in our lineage and use that lineage to be able to now automate our processes that ultimately help with our AI model.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's very, very cool. And the bottom line here, I'll just throw out and maybe just 10-second commentary from you is the AI agents, they're going to need real-time data. They're going to need a lot of
That's correct.
context in order to get things right.
Yes.
And that's the key, right? Is you
Yeah,
really need to
totally.
be prepared with that flow of information that is contextually accurate on the moment it's needed, right?
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. And that's the key thing. And this is why I'm saying we need to be able to figure out what the agents truly will be useful for.
Right,
So that way you're not overloading it with unnecessary data,
right.
just the data that it needs to be able to make certain decisions
That's
for
awesome.
you.
Jide Adeoye, this guy gets it, folks. Very, very impressive. Cloudera, customer, Octopi, they know what they're doing. Don't touch that. We'll be right back. You're listening to Inside Analysis. All right, ladies, welcome back. Here we are at Cloudera Evolve 25 in New York City at the Glass House. I've got Sergio Gago with me, CTO of Cloudera. Atari shirt. I don't know if you can see that. Baller. This guy knows what he's talking about. Atari saved my life when I was like 8 years old. It gave us something to do, like ding, 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 tank battle, Pong. Come
It
on.
saved my life as well. So with Commodore and
The
Spectre,
Commodore 64.
I like to think that was the reason why I became a CTO and came into
Nice.
data and all that.
Very nice.
Thank you very much for having me, Eric.
Yeah, absolutely. I wrote my first programs on a Commodore 64.
Basic.
I did a Dungeons and Dragons simulation model where you would like put in your number of warriors and your hit points and what you were fighting, what their armor class was, and what all that stuff, and it would do 100 battles and give you the
Amazing.
percentage chance of winning.
I think that's interesting because when you had access to that code, it allowed you to start hacking
Uh-huh.
and tinkering with that and say, hey, what if I give my warrior more lives?
Right.
Or
Right.
I
Right.
remember that Nibbles game, the snake
Mhm.
game that then came into the
Right.
Nokias.
Right.
When that came out, I could play into that and say, what if I give myself infinite lives?
Hmm.
So you start hacking into that and you end up a CTO. Go
Yeah.
figure.
Look at that. That's outstanding. And at a very exciting time, a very disruptive time. You,
It
you look
is.
at what ChatGPT just did and these foundational models and the transformers in particular, and it really blew people's minds. Now, you have to be careful about these things, about how you apply it, because of course they are probabilistic in nature. They are not deterministic.
Yeah.
And analytics and business intelligence has been deterministic. So I want to know what are the numbers? What's the prediction you can make? Which decisions should we make? So you got to be careful about the Gen AI stuff, but that's where all these guardrails come into place. And RAG is one of them. MCP is a guardrail to a certain extent, right?
Yeah.
What do you think about this sudden explosion of MCP servers? I've never seen one particular product like hit so many different waves at the same time. Everyone's got an MCP server. What do you
Yeah.
think?
So to some extent, this is not a new concept, right? We used to build applications and we said we need to have a way to access those applications by other systems. And then we created APIs.
Right.
And in the last decade or so, or 15 years, every application needed to have an API that could be consumed by other software.
Right.
But that's deterministic, as
Right.
you were saying. Then ChatGPT came in and brings with it a whole industrial revolution that is arguably larger and bigger and faster than any other industrial revolution.
Sure.
We started with building chatbots and things that today seem to be table stakes. But in
Right.
2023, we're like, oh my God, how do I surf this wave as we go forward? And then we realized, well, we can have all these systems also writing code, and we can have all the systems having access to memory,
Right.
and giving them context of
Right.
where they are operating and for whom they're working.
Right.
With things like RAG and other stuff, right?
Sure.
And then we started thinking, well, if I have a system that does all that, what would happen if I let it talk to another system? And how would they operate? And then what if I bring a third party and a fourth and a fifth? And we started thinking, how do we humans operate the best? Is it when we are solid single rock stars with nothing else, or when we are a music band and we collaborate and everyone brings the best of them and then we work together towards a single goal?
Yeah.
So what if we get agents that are specialized, have specific access and data, and then we let them collaborate?
Right.
So the next question was, all right, how do we find a way for them to share information and to have skills, access to tools, in a way that we don't have to reinvent the wheel continuously? And that's when Anthropic said, hey, here's a standard that we call MCP. Hey, world, do you guys like it? As an open standard, open source standard. It's not a software, right? It's just a standard, a specification on how to build that access to, again, data and skills. Skills can be, what's the weather like in New York today? It's foggy. Or give me the output of a model that gives me the forecast of sales of my shops tomorrow. And then you can say these agents can have access to these skills, these other agents to these other skills, and they can have access to this data, but not to this other data. Essentially, like humans, right? We have skills as well, and we collaborate among each other to leverage those skills and build something that is exponential. So today, MCP is the specification that has been adopted by the world, but there's a lot to say still. There are many limitations in terms of security, for example, on spread, on different speed on the agents, on different models. There's going to be a lot to say still, but yes, every single application, is the long answer, will need to have a way to expose its data and capabilities to agents in the same way that we can do to humans.
Right. Well, and you have to track these agents. There need to be log files. There need to be ways that you can kill a pod that's not doing the right things to know when that's happening. You see a lot of different companies talking about control towers. For example, what's your take on how to control agents at significant scale, and what does that look like, and how many people need to be involved monitoring the agent behavior? What does these new teams and new roles look like?
So that's a really interesting question, because it's essentially a way of thinking, how do we want to operate at the enterprise level? I'm personally very optimistic. I think in a few years, we're going to have digital colleagues that surpass the number of human colleagues.
Yeah, right. That's what Jensen Huang was saying too.
It will happen, right? It's already happening as we speak. Obviously, that requires controls. At the same time, every technology that we have created needed those controls. When Ford created the Model T, there were no signals or traffic lights on the road. And that brought some problems, right? So the world quickly tried to bring some, hey, we need some driving lessons and licenses and some signals and so on, some stop signals, actually. Blinkers. Well, people don't use the blinkers anyway.
You're supposed to.
So with agents and AI in general is the same thing. We have the technology, now we have to bring the guardrails. The challenge there is that this is happening exponentially faster than with the Model T back in what, a century ago almost. So we need to be very quick from the governance perspective, sovereignty perspective, who controls the models, the weights, and so on. And then at the same time, be able to put platforms in place that allow us to know what can the agents do and not do? What do they output? What data can they access? And to whom they can give it? Now, you can think about that model, and that's my favorite way of looking into that, in the same way that we think about humans. Let me put it this way. When you go into the office, you have probably an access card. And that access card allows you to go into certain rooms, but not into other rooms. At the same time, you can access some files. If you try to access all the, I don't know, payslips from all your colleagues, most likely you're not going to be able to access that information, right? From an IT perspective, an HR perspective, our enterprises, our companies, every company is very mature on controlling that flow. We need to mimic that into the agents. And one of the things that we are starting to see around is, well, it's almost like the HR departments and the IT departments are merging so that these digital colleagues have exactly the same type of accesses, limitations, and controls. If I am an agent that's helping you write a report for your boss or a letter to a customer, this agent needs to have exactly the same accesses that you as a human has, because otherwise it cannot do the job, right? And at the same time, it needs to know and understand that it's talking to you and not to someone else, so that this data is contextual on what's needed. So all the tools and platforms, and that's the way that we build Cloudera AI, is built in a way so that all that is built into the system. From what is the LLM that you're using? Can you control it? Can you make sure that it does not change overnight? For example, if you use GPT-5 today, but you try to use the GPT-4 prompts, they don't work the same.
Right.
So imagine you had that baked into a mission critical process in your company.
Sure.
You're into trouble.
It's a problem, yeah.
At the same time, you need to be able to put those guardrails, either red flags or stop words or things that block access to certain data or processes to a given agent, or to not give certain information to a human because it's out of policy, for example. And then last step, letting the agents talk to each other and play with each other.
Right.
So what a time to be alive.
There's a lot going on in there, and you make a really excellent point about being careful and really thinking through the use cases. And when I think about where things are going, wow, as well as anyone that every enterprise is unique. Even if they have the same set of tools in the same industry, they still have different people, they have different policies, different priorities, and you want your AI agents to absorb that. But the key, I think you even suggested this, was to give them just enough context to do what they need to get done. And there's a recency bias that you're going to want in there. And there are some guardrails you want in there. Some of the companies I'm talking to are basically using other models to sort of gauge, okay, this was the output, is that correct? That's quality assurance, basically, but it is additional cost, right? But maybe I'll throw this question at you. It seems to me that one of the challenges is that the foundation keeps changing so quickly. You kind of commented on this. What's your advice to CIOs to just stay focused and not get swept up in the desire to do new things before they're ready?
Right. So you're spot on the enterprise fabric that needs to be embedded in the system, right? And it all boils down into what is the value that we're generating with this? Do you have a very clear use case with an idea of the ROI that you're going to get? Why are you doing this?
Right.
Is this operational efficiency? Is this potential of revenue generation? Is this getting better insights? Is analytical process? Whatever that is, right? But it needs to be very clear instead of shooting from the hip.
Right.
The challenge that many companies have had since 2023 on deploying LLM-based use cases, whether they were chatbots or agents or anything like that, was that most of those were proofs of concept that were experimental, generated amazing wow factor, right? They went that, they showed that to the CEO loved it and said, can we bring this into production tomorrow?
Right.
And then the legal team or the compliance team came in and said, absolutely no, you're nuts.
Right.
But still, they were able to show value very quickly, right? Most of the use cases that were tried by the company, and there was an MIT research report last week about this, failed miserably, either because there was no ROI from that, because again, it was technology driven instead of case driven,
right?
Or two, because it got stuck at the POC level. So when you build these platforms, you have to make sure that they are baked, completely embedded in your company data fabric. Back into the point of the agent accessing your data and so on. If you can build your agents within the same place where you have already vetoed and vetted your infrastructure, that your cybersecurity team, your legal team, everyone already has that enterprise grade,
right?
Then you can build that into production safely. Let me put it this way. When we have been doing machine learning, classical machine learning for many years now, we've got quite mature into building that data fabric, the governance layer, if you will. But we know the data catalogs that we put in place. In Cloudera, we just acquired a company called Octopai last year. Who can access the data? What is the lineage of that data? And then when you use that to train a machine learning model, so you can have certain explainability and interpretability. We had that very well and robust all the way until the beginning of generative AI.
Right.
And then suddenly generative AI comes in and we all forgot about all those best practices and principles and say, no, let's just go and build proof of concept like there's no tomorrow. Now companies realize we need to have exactly the same pipelines and processes and bring the agents into that process.
Right. No, that's very clever. I think you really hit the nail on the head there. And it kind of reminds me of some of the things we've talked about on this show. And we got our segment ending here in just a couple of minutes, but I'll throw this curveball at you. For 50 years, we have worked to perfect the foundation of information systems, which is the database. And we've made it faster, more durable, allowed more concurrent users. But one thing that was never, ever in question was quality of the data. You always got out what you put in. And now with generative AI, it's like you're slapping a noise filter on the end of this 50-year pristine process. So it's going to, and we're almost like in defense mode now. We're like trying to tame this thing to get it to act. Isn't that wild? Is that not the most remarkable inflection point?
It is, and it is, I think, a brave new world. Databases for a long time were structured data. And LLMs, by definition, work on unstructured data. They generate text. So we're not that good at identifying, is this correct? Right? From a factual standpoint, you can ask the LLM, what's the population of California? And you can verify whether that's right or wrong. But if you ask the LLM, can you write for me an essay about the history of California? Is that right or wrong? You have to think in terms of completeness, alignment with you as a human and with the context, the size of the document. It has many more factors to evaluate, which is linked to your point before on having yet another LLM going in and evaluating the output. But it's not a binary good, not good anymore.
That's right.
And structured data is much more complex.
That's right. Well, and you're going to have layers. You're going to have stochastic layers, deterministic layers, stochastic layers, deterministic layers. And the key is to have those humans in the loop, the people who know what's right, who make the decisions. That's why most of these use cases have been internally focused as decision support, as your little helper who's making suggestions, but don't let them drive the car, folks, especially the big expensive car. Don't mean there is self-driving cars, but they do crash. Like bad things have happened. So we're kind of knocking on the door here, but fascinating conversation here, folks. Don't touch that. We'll be right back. You're listening to InsideAnalysis. All right, folks, back here at Evolve 25 Cloudera with Sergio Gago, CTO of Cloudera. And Sergio, there's this new concept, a new term I heard, private AI, which is where you can span on-prem, cloud, public cloud, private cloud. Explain what private AI is and how you get there.
It's a beautiful concept because you would get a different answer depending on who you ask. So let me try to explain the concept with an example first. Let's say you're the CEO of a large bank. And then in your company, you have many credit analysts that evaluate your credit risk, the loans that you provide, the risk of those loans, and so on. These people are really good quantitative analysts, right? They know the math, they know the ethos of the bank, the risk profile. So imagine a company comes in and says, hey, I can replace all your credit analysts. They're going to be on the other side of the world. I'm not going to tell you where. I'm not going to tell you who they are. I just tell you they're good. Trust me. I'm going to charge you per word they give you back, not for the quality of the words, but just a couple of things. I can cancel my contract anytime, any day. I can change the price anytime, any day. I can change those analysts and their output will be different as well, but don't you worry, it's going to be okay. And yeah, maybe I will change the capacity, the amount of words that I can give you. Would you as the CEO of a large bank agree to that? But it may be cheaper and scalable and no, of course you will say no. So today when we use pay-as-you-go third-party LLMs, That is what we're doing effectively. And don't get me wrong, those systems are great. They
No,
help
right.
us build the system.
Sure.
But if you try to use, I think we mentioned before, a GPT-4 prompt in GPT-5, the answer is not going to be the same. It's going to, even though GPT-5 is a better model, maybe the answer is worse because they've moved the rug under your
Right.
head. So as a company, when you control your supply chain and all your systems that build your company, you need to know what models, every part of your infrastructure, from the hardware to the models, what are they running? When can you change it if you want to change them on your own terms?
Right.
So that is the concept of private AI, having the governance and the sovereignty of controlling your own destiny effectively. That means you decide what models to run, you decide where to run them, and when and how you update them. If I decide to install Llama, Mistral, DeepSeek, any model, I decide when I want to go to the next version so that we add determinism.
Right.
The third step is the data that goes in there. How do we make sure that through your fine-tuning mechanisms, through RAG and other systems, the data that goes in, make sure that all the process, the input and the output is still private to me. My data is not being used to train any other systems. It doesn't leave my safe environments. And then the output is only used for the process that I deem important within my data governance. Who can access what? That is private AI. That can be on a public cloud, that can be on a data center, that can be on the private cloud, but it needs to be fully under your control and under your own terms all the time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You know, the movement continues to be bigger and bigger models, which is interesting because we've learned bigger is not always better. And I've talked to some really smart people. My buddy, Dr. Usama Fayyad, he runs the Institute for Experiential AI out of Northeastern University in Massachusetts. And he said to me a couple of years ago, he said, these models, they're too big. They're not supposed to work. We don't know why they work. And I'm listening to this guy like he's one of the experts in the field. And the people at the coalface don't know how these things work. Anthropic is trying to instrument things, but still, like that is very unwieldy for anyone involved in governance, anyone involved in compliance. That's why you want these guardrails. That's why I think this private AI concept is powerful. But what about the smaller language models? Is that an area of focus for you guys as well?
It absolutely is. And at the end of the day, it's no one size fits all.
Right.
And companies need to understand that. Now, what size fits what?
Right.
That's the question. So let's say you have a very simple use case. For example, you have a long text and you want to extract company names from that text. A relatively small model, even one that can run on your own laptop, can probably do a decent job at that with a high level of accuracy. Now, if you want to write a full essay with a lot of context and nuances and reasoning capabilities, that model is not enough.
Right.
What companies need to put in place is a whole benchmarking system.
Oh.
That's along the lines of the guardrails and the ability of moving towards this sort of private AI. What do I mean by this? Imagine you have this use case of extracting company names from a document. By the way, it's a very typical natural language processing use case.
Right.
You create, let's say 100, but we can say 1,000 examples on a data set, a golden data set, with the input and the output that's expected. Maybe it's human curated. We call this labeling in the days of machine learning.
Right.
So you have a table of 1,000 rows that says, this text has this company, this text has this company, with 100% accuracy. And then you run another data set, your experimental data set, another 1,000 text with any model you want, let's say GPT-4. And you're going to get a level of accuracy, for example, 99.9%. Then you say, all right, let me see a small model, a Nemotron small one, or a 8 billion Llama model or something. Let me run it again and compare that level of accuracy. And then you get, well, with a very small model, I get a 98.5% accuracy. So from a business perspective, you can make a decision.
Right.
Is this enough for a 10th of the cost?
Right.
Yes, no. And then you make a business decision. If this is a mission critical use case, probably you would want to go with the highest accuracy.
Right.
But if it's something that will always have a human in the loop, you're going to be pretty okay by paying 1/10.
Well, and so you're answering a question that we had a little bit earlier, which is what are the new roles in this new world that you're going to have? Because the LLMs give tremendous productivity increases for the individual worker. Like that's one thing for sure, is that they can, if you learn how to use these things, you can burn through so much more drudgery. You can do so much more research. You can really help yourself get a long way. It's at the enterprise level that things get a bit dicey. But to your point, I think this benchmarking position is pretty important. And so you're going to have someone who is focused on quality assurance across models, across the business, working with the teams, working with the data science teams to say, okay, look, there's your output. This is what you have now. Let's go ahead and test it. And that's a regular process. That's a full-time job to pay attention to those things, right?
It's a complete compliance and evaluating and data labeling process that works on the unstructured way and on the structured way. So for example, if your model requires to do a mathematical computation, like multiplying through 7 times 3, you probably don't want the LLM answer for that. We know that LLMs are not good at math,
right?
But we want to give that LLM a calculator so that the answer from the calculator we know is deterministic for most calculators.
Right.
Likewise, if you need to use a classifier machine learning model that we know is tried and true, that we can explain, we don't want the LLM to make a guess on that machine learning model. We want it to use that model and leverage all the tools in hand.
Right.
So it's like, if you have your toolbox and you have a hammer and you want to try to hammer a nail, you go and pick the hammer. You're telling the LLM, can you nail a hammer with your hand?
Right.
Better not.
Don't do that. That's funny. You know, we only got a couple minutes left here, but the last one I'll throw at you is really quite bewildering. If you look at some of these new companies that are just taking off, like Windsurf and Replete and a bunch of these other guys, you can now generate so much code so quickly. But my impression is that you want to use that for exploratory purposes, for R&D. And then if you're going to put something into production, that's when you have to be very careful about what you're doing, because these companies that just take code from Claude or from some of these other models and just throw it into production, there are going to be long-term problems that you won't even know about for weeks or months.
100%.
Right? And so there's got to be some tension in the development world where people are like, come on, let's go. And someone's like, hold on, like, let's make sure that this is bulletproof. Let's make sure it does exactly what we want and test it. So it's like that QA role again is going to be of tremendous importance, right?
100%. And back into the point we made earlier, these are supposed to be extensions that make us superhuman,
right?
Not things that replace us as humans.
That's right.
So these byte coding tools are amazing.
Right.
We call them byte coding. I use them all the time. But think about this: how did we create a functional requirement of an application? When we wanted to build a website, an iPhone application, or anything like that, we would create a product document, maybe some mockups, maybe we would do a lot of text and write in. So a product manager would take days, weeks, maybe longer to write a document that then we would give to a group of engineers to say, hey guys, can you build this? How long it would take.
Right.
What if instead of doing that, this product manager goes and builds the actual prototype on how this person wants it to look like and to interact and the different functionalities? Is that what you will deploy into production? Absolutely not.
Right.
But is the best prototype that you can give to engineers to go and build.
That's right.
And then engineers start building that. And they use coding agents to be much, much faster, as in 4 to 5 times faster.
Right.
You don't need to type the code yourself.
Right.
It's almost like every software developer becomes a technical lead that reviews the code of an army of engineers.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening.
But you do review that.
That's right.
And it's amazing.
That's right. No, that's exactly correct. So it makes you a superhero. It kind of takes you up to the next level, but you still need to dot I's and cross T's and make sure it's all pristine. Fabulous conversation here, folks. Cloudera, what can I say? They're rocking and rolling. I've been covering them for a long, long time now, and the agentic AI era is upon us. Look this gentleman up online, Sergio Gago, CTO of Cloudera. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Eric.
Pleasure to be here. We'll be back.